All right, so we got some breaking news, and I implore you to stick with me in this video because I have a very, very bad feeling about what's about to happen, and I assure you nobody else is going to share this perspective with you, especially the phony baloney alternative media talking heads who masquerade like they have no political agenda when really they're like ideological Trojan horses, okay? They definitely have agenda. You can bet that I'm beholden to no one but me. Not the left, not the right, not even the middle. I'm wherever I want to go, and that's why you're going to get everything I know when you come on to this channel. Well, most of it. Because, of course, you know, YouTube still has guidelines, right? Anyways, Cyberattack Hysteria has completely gripped the planet. Have you noticed that? Just in the past week, this flurry of media reports, of Hollywood movies coming out, and now there's already a sequel in the works. It's not a direct sequel, but it might as well be because it's called Civil War. Anyways, we'll talk about that in just a moment. We got to talk about that movie again as well. But there's something incredibly unnerving about a cyber attack scenario like that most people are not connecting the dots with right now. And while it's true that when the government starts saying you should be afraid of something, you should start questioning the government. No doubt, full stop, you absolutely should. I totally get that. Like I say, I promote skepticism, I promote critical, analytical thinking on this channel every single day. However, we must be very careful because as soon as that threat becomes palpable in the minds of the masses, you're going to get that group of people who are immediately suspicious that it's all just a ploy and it's not a real threat. Cybersecurity is a very real threat. In fact, it is more real every single day. And the reason why is because there's more devices, there's more network devices, there's more vectors for attack. And the more interconnected things are, the greater the likelihood that if you infect any part of it, it's going to spread, okay? Now, a conspiracy theorist might say to themselves, maybe they just brought us to this level of connectivity so they could take us down, right? Maybe they had to bring us up to this level of connectivity so they could do the rug pull thing, pull the internet. You want to see people riot? You take away their TikTok, you take away Facebook, you take away Snapchat, okay? You take away YouTube, you take away X. You take that away, people will be losing their minds. But here's what people don't understand, is that this is going to be one of the most divisive, political, apocalypse scenarios that could ever unfold, a cyber attack. Why? Because yes, there's a lot of plausible deniability. It's almost impossible to attribute blame with 100% certainty. So a politician, if they were corrupt and they wanted to push for some kind of agenda that the public currently wasn't supporting, and they wanted to stage an event that didn't have direct, immediate physical harm to a lot of people, a cyber attack would be a great option, okay? Which is not to say it wouldn't have long-term effects and bring down the life expectancy as a whole on a long enough timeline. Absolutely it would, because a lot of the critical infrastructure would definitely be compromised, and of course people would start to fight with one another. And indeed, it would be a very easy card to play, you would think, right? But the problem is, the thing that makes it so easy is actually why it would be so hard to pull off. Because you're going to have so many people, especially in the current political environment going into a 2024 election season, in a situation where we've been more divided than for a long time. I don't want to say ever before, but because there's that whole Civil War thing in the States. But, you know, since probably at least maybe not even the 60s, the divide nowadays is different. You know, it's just different. It's there. It's not as conventional and like first generation warfare where you got one army on one side and one army on another. No, it's this schizophrenic mishmash of groups that disagree with one another, and it's going to be chaos. And this is why a cyber attack pre-apocalypse collapse scenario is the most terrifying. Because I want you to think about this. The fog of war during a war, like we're seeing with Ukraine, Israel, it's thick, right? We don't know who's telling the truth. We don't know what the true death counts are. You know, I think a lot of people are calling into question the death counts of the past. Can we believe everything that's been said in the past, you know? Because we're seeing all the lies coming out on both sides right now. People exaggerating numbers or deflating numbers. So what do we believe? Now imagine if you don't have the internet, if you don't have communications. And cyber attacks, again, one of the things that makes them easy to execute if you're trying to pass an agenda, it's also a double-edged sword. Because a lot of people now already are not going to trust you. Because I assure you, a lot of the people who've been watching the movie Leave the World Behind, they're not going to believe it. No matter what crisis happens, you're going to have a handful of people who always think it was the government's fault. And, well, again, we'll never know. You have to understand there are real enemies out there who, as we become more interconnected and more vulnerable technologically, and there's still some societies that are very analog. I'm talking about Iran, Russia, North Korea, China, not so much. They're a lot more advanced, but there are many analog societies that would benefit if we had our telecom shut down. And if we're not able to launch a retaliatory strike because our command and control and our logistics is all screwed up, then that's an advantageous position. So would we shoot ourselves in the foot? There's many catch-22s to this. If you're the leader of a country like the United States and you say, I got to get more money for this war, and you go and shoot yourself in the foot, you unleash some sort of cyber attack, and it gets out of hand. Maybe it's a virus or something. It's like the Stuxnet thing that happened, right? If you do something like that and it gets out of hand, you potentially put yourself in a very vulnerable situation, and it could actually backfire. Okay, so the scariest thing about the cyber attack is not knowing what's going on, and that was the primary takeaway. I think that should have been the main takeaway from the movie Leave the World Behind. I understand there was a lot of civil war, subtext in there that I talked about ad nauseum in that video. I did an 1.5-hour video on it or something like that. Go and check it out. I pointed out a lot of things that I don't think I've even heard anybody else talk about yet. But I think the main takeaway there is the confusion. There is no other collapse scenario where you're going to have that level of confusion. Okay, the pandemic, sure, created a lot of division. Was it a powerful virus? Was it not? Was it killing people? Was it not? The war, again, you have one side fighting another. You have a big cyber attack in the current political environment, and it's quickly going to become an incredibly divisive issue. And people are going to start fighting. People are going to start looking for scapegoats. And we've never seen it yet. We've never seen the social chaos that might ensue from an internet rug pull at this point in time, when we're so interconnected, okay, when we're so digitally dense in our devices, on average 19 to 20 devices per household that are connected in some way via these frequencies, Wi-Fi, or directly by landline. So the confusion that erupts there is going to be chaotic. There is no scenario that I can think of where the fog of war would be as thick as a cyber attack. It would just be total confusion. And I think that's why that movie was so good, because it really drove that point home. Regardless of what your thoughts are of the Obama production studio or whatever the hell, let's just appreciate the fact that it got people talking about this thing. Now, I've said yesterday that I do think it's coincidental that Ukraine was hit by its biggest cyber attack since the beginning of the war, only a few days after this movie's release, and all of the countries now are talking about, we gotta, prepare for a cyber war. Well, what does that really mean, right? What do they want from us? Some people commented on that video. I forgot to say that the ATMs where they were in Ukraine were in fact working. Well, the same thing happened here in Canada, okay? ATMs require an internet connection, and the telecoms providers, that the biggest one, in fact, in Ukraine, was the one that was crippled by this cyber attack, which is still ongoing today. Now, if you were at an ATM that wasn't hardline to this telecoms provider, then you likely didn't experience a problem. You could get cash out of the machine, but that's going to be on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. So while it's true that certain people probably could get cash out of the ATMs, many couldn't, and that's why we showed you the video that showed that the ATMs were down, okay? Because it's all intimately connected. And I had a cybersecurity expert share a concept with me called digital density and a digital ecology. That the more network devices are, the greater the likelihood that a cascading negative effect can ensue. Okay, so the more interconnected things are, the greater we become more vulnerable as a society as a whole. Sorry guys, really late here, my brain is fried, but I just wanted to address a lot of these points today. So just keep that in mind and go and check out the video I did in, I think it was 2021, that looks over all of the potential ways that a massive cyber attack could impact all of the critical infrastructures. I'm pretty sure we touch everything in that video. I had some help from a cybersecurity expert at the time in making the video. The thing we got wrong about it was the time scale. And this is the other scary part, is that in the movie, everything kind of happens at once. But what will likely happen is that cyber attacks are going to ramp up. A nation, put it this way, a nation could have 100,000 missiles. They can't launch all those missiles at once. Like the Hezbollah, they have over 100,000 missiles that can hit places in Israel. They can't launch them all at once. They don't have 100,000 launchers. So oftentimes we mistakenly presume that they're going to be able to blow their load all at once, but it's going to take time. And so a real preemptive cyber attack, when the cyber war starts to ramp up, it could take months of just back and forth tit for tat cyber war escalation before it went kinetic in some way, shape, or form. And that's what I fear, okay? It's going to start someday, and it's just not going to stop, because there's going to be escalation on the cyber war front that we don't see. Now, is this going to be used to justify getting into a war, funding more war, sending more money to the defense contractors? Probably, okay? We can almost guarantee that there's going to be a problem reaction solution component to this. But that doesn't mean that these threats aren't real. And if you are trying to erode your opponent's capabilities, you would first start on the level of cyber attack, and then you would start doing things like Russia has been doing in the last few weeks, messing with satellites, using electronic warfare on NATO equipment in order to distort our signals that we're trying to send one another and compromise our communications. So just be very skeptical about what's about to happen, because I do think that this is going to be a very, very divisive issue. And it could come from all sides. There could be... there's like a double agent component to this. So on the one hand, it could come from our enemies. It could originate from inside America, right? But knowing that it would be blamed on the Biden administration, whoever was in power, the other side might do it, right? So these are things to just be mindful of. Or it could actually be an outright charge of our opponents did it, and that's how we create the civil war in the West. But either way, this is going to become more and more of a problem. The era of cyber warfare has not yet reached its peak, and I don't think it ever will, for that matter. There'll always now be well, there always has been, but now that we're more interconnected, it's very easy for the entire system to be brought to its knees. Anyways, other news today, Germany has ramped up war machine spending. They are now stepping in and filling in the void left in the wake of waiting support by the Americans for the Ukrainians. Now, I think this was all part of the plan. I've often suspected that they employ some kind of staggered strategy in terms of managed escalation, so that one country will provide the tanks, another country will provide some longer range missiles, and so on and so forth. So Russia can't really zero in and effectively target one country and blame one country for what's going on, because they'll keep being a moving target. So soon it'll be Germany, who's the primary benefactor of this war. And then it will move, it will shift to somebody else. It'll be Poland or something. So they want to keep it being a moving target. And then I'm pretty sure there was probably some back channel communication between Biden and Schultz. Biden said, look, we're trying to sort this out. Morale is slipping on the front lines. Can you do something and we'll hook you up later on, right? You know, you give them $8 billion now and maybe we'll give you a better deal on gas down the road because we blew up your pipeline. Did I say that out loud? Because, you know, somebody blew up your pipeline, right? So, something to consider. Anyways, that's coming. Russia is threatening to attack NATO bases that deploy the F-16s that, of course, are nuclear capable. And they are training, utilizing those nuclear bombs at bases all around Europe, okay? These tactical nuclear weapons that can be mounted to F-16s, they're training on them, and these F-16s are going to be deployed to Ukraine pretty soon. Russia is saying if you're using NATO airstrips, those airstrips are going to be a target. Now, they've issued these red line ultimatums before, and they've never really made good on them. However, it's important to know who is stating the red line. Is it Putin himself? Is it a part of government policy? Or is it just some off-the-rails politician who made an off-the-cuff remark that if you attack the Crimean Bridge, we're going to nuke you, in the case of Dmitry Medvedev. But, of course, because these things have the potential to carry nuclear weapons, and because they probably will be launched, and there probably already are planes being launched from NATO countries, they're just not F-16s, Russia is going to respond. How they're going to respond is anybody's best guess. Moscow was also attacked tonight by 9 more drones. Doesn't even make the Western media news anymore, which is fascinating. It really is fascinating when you think about it, that Moscow can be attacked by drones, which very likely are, in some way, shape, or form, probing operations for when the big war between NATO starts, because this is all about NATO versus Russia, okay? Make no mistake about it, Ukraine is unfortunately just sacrificial lambs. What remains of Ukraine likely will become the 33rd member of NATO. Maybe it's only going to be Lviv at that point. It's hard to say, and I don't say that I'm being facetious, but, you know, I make no, I don't want to make jokes about the loss of life. I have no dog in this fight. It upsets me to see people posting videos with alacrity about people dying, you know, these videos of dropping grenades on soldiers, and it's just, it's sad. It's very sad how demeaned life has become. Which is all the more reason why you should prepare for the apocalypse, because it seems inevitable with a mass mindset like that. Anyways, Iran and Russia have also entered a nuclear co-op. Okay, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Israel has issued a final ultimatum to Hezbollah. Now, some people are saying this is an act of desperation. Some people are saying it's a bluff. Some people are saying it's just something that Hezbollah is absolutely not going to agree to, and thus this is an excuse for Israel to go to war so Netanyahu doesn't have to go to jail. I guess we'll find out, but they have to respond to that within the next 48 hours. We've got to talk about some emails. I got some interesting information coming from around the world. NATO is increasing its defense spending. The U.S. is increasing its defense spending, the biggest defense spending bill in history. However, that doesn't factor in inflation. When adjusted for inflation, I'm sure it was back in the Iraq War era. The only difference would be, and another difference would be, that the money doesn't buy you nearly as much as it used to. Okay, so the cost of ammo, this is why they are, Visto Outdoors is one of the largest arms manufacturers or ammunition manufacturers in the United States, who's talking about gunpowder shortages. This is why they've put an export ban on firearms. They're running out of stuff, and it costs a lot more. So, you know, 800 billion, 1 trillion, doesn't get you as far as it used to when it comes to buying weapons, even if you are your own supplier. We got to talk about the Pentagon eyeing up EMP weapons, small-scale ones that they can use against drone swarms. Yes, we're going to talk about the movie and the other Civil War movie that's coming out. We also got to talk about the Houthis attacking once again, and the money printer has fired up once again. Wouldn't you know it? What a surprise. So this UK cyber threat. A report from the Joint Committee on the National Security Strategy has warned that the UK is vulnerable to a large-scale cyber attack that could bring the country to a halt. What a surprise we get this news after it's now mainstream. The report suggests that responsibility for dealing with ransomware attacks should be transferred from the Home Office to the Cabinet Office under the supervision of the Deputy Prime Minister. The report criticizes the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, for not prioritizing cyber threats and focusing on other issues. So they understand that, you know, the war with NATO and Russia is coming, and they got to prepare for this because this is going to be the first thing to go. And I just, you know, it's going to be one hell of a psychological experiment, a social psych experiment when people don't have access to the internet and Instagram. What are the Insta thoughts going to do when they can't take any more selfies in the washroom? What are they going to do for attention? People are going to be losing their minds. Maybe it's going to be the best thing that ever happens to the world, but I guarantee you, 9/11 ain't got nothing on, and this is no disrespect to the people who perished on 9/11, okay? Just not meant to be disrespectful. I'm just saying it's got nothing on people who can't post dumb shit on the internet and who can't scroll their lives away. Portugal suffered a cyber attack as well. I got an email from an individual who lives there and just saw my last video where I was talking about cyber warfare, and they were experiencing a communication blackout in Portugal on down detector. Basically, almost the entire telecoms was down there temporarily. The Ukrainian cyber attack persists into its second day. China has ramped up its cyber attacks on the United States, but again, it's very hard to attribute blame when dealing with these things. So this is why we have to be very careful. It's so easy, right, for a government to just say, these guys cyber attacked us, like Israel, Iran cyber attacked us, we got to attack them. But if they did that, would probably be, well, an exercise in self-deletion at this point, because they got their hands full. Air defense neutralized 9 unmanned aerial vehicles over the Kaluga and Moscow regions overnight. Russian air defense systems intercepted and destroyed 9 Ukrainian drones over Moscow. So they're still trying to do these probing operations. There's been a lot of military activity. You know, every day there's a lot of nuclear command and control stuff going on with the planes. I honestly stopped paying attention to a lot of that, which is probably not a good thing, because when you're at DEFCON 3, every day it's like the world is ending, you know, because there's so many planes in the sky, which we are definitely, without a doubt, at DEFCON 3. And DEFCON 3 is the most important, because right when you cross that line into DEFCON 2, nuclear war is almost a certainty. So, you know, DEFCON 2, I can't remember the exact designation, but it's basically nuclear war is a high probability. So that's planes off the ground, everything in the air, bombers off the ground, all that stuff. And DEFCON 1 is getting ready to actually, you know, it's imminent. So DEFCON 3 is the closest we can get to nuclear war without it really being nuclear war. And that's what people need to understand. Those 2 other levels, I almost wonder if that's just there to provide people some mental solace, so that they don't panic if, you know, when, you know, just to, because it gives you a little bit of hope to know that there's an extra step in there, when really DEFCON 3, DEFCON 2 or 1, they're the same thing. I'm sure there's some military people who might disagree with me, but I'm just thinking about how scenarios might unfold. And, you know, DEFCON 2, Cuban Missile Crisis, okay, I get that, but really at that point in time, the Russians weren't going to do much to us in that situation. Russia is threatening to strike NATO bases in Eastern Europe if they host Ukrainian F-16s, a senior Russian official said today. We are already hearing comments that amid the significant destruction of Ukraine's airstrip infrastructure, the F-16s delivered to Ukraine may be flying their missions from bases in Poland, Romania, and Slovakia. And they said that they will resort to retaliatory measures if Kiev uses NATO air bases for Western-made planes. What are these retaliatory measures going to be? I don't know. I mean, for all we know, they're going to get a harsh talking to. The way Russia lets its red lines be overstepped nowadays, it's anybody's best guess. Just looking at my time on the clock, we got 11%, so let's wrap this up. Germany may declare a state of emergency over Ukraine. As I indicated before, Scholz's coalition government has just reached a deal on its 2024 budget following weeks of negotiations. So they're going to be sending $8 billion for arms. That's euros. So that's about, I think the euro's trading a little above the US dollar right now. So that's really about $10 billion for weapons. That's just from Germany now. That doesn't include all the rest of Europe and whatever else they're going to get from the United States, which they'll get eventually. And another $6.5 billion to support Ukrainian refugees living in Germany. Now, all of this, well, the German industry has been crippled by high energy prices. So you know that unless some shit goes down soon, the population there is going to start to get a little upset. You could probably imagine. Again, the U.S. Senate has also passed a defense spending bill, 87-13, for roughly $900 billion. And Norway also announced another $1 billion in support. They're going to be paying all of Ukraine's bills, all its public service workers. Even NATO is going to be increasing its spending by around 2 billion euros and another 5.5 billion on civilian expenditures. So across the board increases. Okay, we're talking 10 to 15% in some cases, like Russia, almost 50% increase in military expenditures. Exactly what you'd expect to see in the run-up to World War III. Iran and Russia are about to partake in a nuclear co-op. So this is going to be, this is not going to be well received by the Israelis. Just today, Netanyahu said that they're going to have to deal with the Ukrainian nuclear program. And so this thing that the Russians and the Iranians are working on, it's called the PIK nuclear reactor project. It is the world's largest beam-type reactor research facility with a thermal power of 100 megawatts. This reactor is built to become the main neutron source for nuclear weapons and other nuclear technologies, and the reactor is going to be a major nuclear asset to the Russian research community and is expected to play a significant role in the development of new technologies. So I'm certain that the Iranians are going to be training alongside the Russians, and this partnership is not going to be well received by the Israelis, because what this could potentially mean is that this is the first stage of some level of sharing of nuclear technologies to help Iran become a nuclear superpower. Now, Trump today came out and said if he was in charge, he would be cool with Korea having nuclear weapons as long as they didn't make any more. Didn't say anything about the Iranians. I am concerned that if Trump does get in there, we're going to see a war with Iran 100%. If he doesn't get in, maybe it's 90%, right? I know it's not that much of a difference, but those are the times we're living in. So this is Israel's ultimatum to Hezbollah. Don't be surprised if this is the story for the rest of the week, starting tomorrow. Israel has issued a proposal for an agreed reality with Hezbollah. If they reject, Israel will use force and act militarily. This is according to Israel Channel 12. Now, this is part of the agreement. This is a revised agreement that was in place before but was never agreed to. Number one, they want the removal of Hezbollah to a minimum of 5 to 7 kilometers from the border so that it will not be possible to fire directly at the Israeli settlements in the north. And number two, no change in the area after the removal of Hezbollah, i.e. the prevention of reconstructing Hezbollah outposts that were destroyed by the ADF. So they're not saying that they're going to move back 5 to 7 kilometers. They're saying Hezbollah has to move back. Now, even if Hezbollah does agree to this, a friend of mine suggested that it's very likely that what Hezbollah is doing is in relation to what's happening in the Gaza Strip, right? They're trying to assist in some way to distract the Israelis. And that they're not going to stop that if the war in Gaza continues. And they've had some pretty hard days recently. In spite of the fact that Israel is making some progress, they still got a long way to go. And seawater in the tunnels or not, these guys are getting it brought to them, man. Like, there's just video after video, and we're talking about 20 armored vehicles a day. I don't know if they're being honest about how many casualties there are, if they're just time releasing that to the public, if the numbers are going to get bigger later. But either way, Netanyahu's in a really, really tough spot right now, okay? And he is either going to continue the war or he's probably going to get the book thrown at him. Now, I was going to talk about some emails I received, but it looks like I'm running out of time here. So I think I'm just going to quickly, I mean, the gist of it is there's a lot of military activity happening all over the world. I'll probably go into more detail about these tomorrow. I also want to talk about another email I got about Leave the World Behind, something, a little Easter egg that I didn't pick up on the first time when I reviewed it. And yeah, some other stuff. But I think I'm going to leave it there for tonight because even my phone has died, and that's what I use to control the camera with. So we're going to have to call it quits. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned because tomorrow I got a guest on, man, that, wow, this guy just completely blew my mind with some of the stuff he was telling me. And I'm sure this is going to be one of the most insightful interviews that you've ever watched. But you're going to have to come with it with an open mind. This is an educated person, PhD. This is no bullshit conspiracy stuff, but it's very concerning, okay? So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Take care.